Could everyone please stand for today's whakatau? Nui kia whakaruna puke. As always, onwards and upwards. Apologies, who's chair? Now let's go. So no apologies. Any urgent business? Late items, could I please have it that we're going to have the two items, there's the waka going forward, and we did have that we were going to have the second item in public excluded. We dealt with it this morning when my brother came. I don't think we need to go into public excluded. Does anyone? Pretty straightforward. Yep. So I'm going to say that the two items are in open public. So that's waka going forward and where we are positioned on future for local government. I'm happy to move that. Can someone please second it? Second, Councillor Payne. All those in favour? Those against? Anyone got any declarations of interest? Public forum. Public forum. Sorry, are you here for public forum? Okay, that's fine. So, enormous day ahead of us, team. So let's drop the blade and we're into it. Over to item 1, which is representation review. Over to Peter. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Joining us online is Dale Kostowski and Ben from Election Services. I'll introduce the item and then pass to Your Worship to Dale. I'll take the item read. However, I just note in recommendation 2, as part of the suggested timetable for representational arrangements review, there's the option of doing pre-consultation with part of the recommended process. I'll pass over to Dale.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I'll kick off then. So good afternoon, everyone. Representation arrangements review. The first two things have already been dealt with. That's a decision on your electoral system and the establishment, yes or no, on Māori wards. So they've been dealt with, and now we move into the representation review proper. This is a legally required review. One must be done every 6 years, a minimum of every 6 years. So we are into that process. And really, today we're looking to seek a direction from Council on whether there should be preliminary public consultation undertaken and to adopt a timeline to complete the process. Just on the next page on what we need to consider, I won't go into the detail of that, but pretty much there are 3 things that a council must consider under legislation. That's what are your communities of interest, what is the best effective representation, and the fairness of that representation. So we need to just establish what are the district's communities of interest. Have they changed? Have we reflected any population growth? That sort of thing. We then need to look at the effective representation. So what's our best number of councillors and how they should be elected? Should we retain ward system? Should we go at large? Should we have a mixture? These are all options that we can debate as we progress into the review next year. And also the role of community boards. Should we have them? Should we not have them? Should there be more or less or whatever? Are all detail to be determined next year. And then we look at the fair representation. So if we have wards, each member has to represent about the same number of people, plus or minus 10%. Just over the page then, briefly, current arrangements, you guys are all aware of that. Mayor elected at large and 14 councillors from 8 wards and 12 community board members from 2 community boards. So one of the things we'll be looking at is that about the right number? Should we be increasing, decreasing the number of councillors? You can currently have between 5 and 29 councillors. So we need to look at, is 14 about right? Should we be going down to 10 or going up to 15 or whatever in the detail? Looking at the basis that we have to work on, we look at population estimates. So with the latest ones that we must use are at 30th of June 2023. These is based on the 2018 census with estimates done by the Department of Statistics every 12 months. We cannot use the 2023 census, unfortunately, because it won't be available in the detail that we need until the end of next year after this process is finished. So you can see I've just put in there a table there of the current wards and those that comply with that plus or minus 10%. And you can immediately see out of the 8, 3 do not comply. One is marginally, West Otago minus 10.65%. So that indicates that we do have to look at those. We can, if we choose in the process next year, to go outside the plus or minus 10% because of various reasons, splitting a community of interest and that sort of thing. If we do decide to go outside that plus or minus 10%, then it's automatically referred to the Local Government Commission. And then the matter is taken out of councillors' hands and over to the Commission. So you can see there with the 3, we've got minus 10.65, plus 15.93, minus 13.24. So in the detail next year, we'll be looking at have the communities changed or grown or whatever. Should we be looking at rejigging all boundaries or just rejigging those affected boundaries or leaving them the same and knowing that it goes off to the Commission for their determination. Consultation, that's one of the 2 areas that we really would like some guidance on. It's not a legal requirement to do preliminary informal consultation, but it is strongly recommended by the Local Government Commission. They often will say, what public consultation did council undertake to form the view of whatever's landed on in their final proposal? They have stated a number of times that they are keen to know the views of the 15 elected members, but there is 20,000 people out there also that they want to know where they canvassed and what their thoughts are. So the preliminary consultation, you can do as much or as little as you like. We strongly recommend that you do some, because it actually forms a basis or gives some information back to councillors when they're sort of looking at their initial proposal. This is what the community has indicated. So you can do as much or as little as you like in that informal consultation. And I believe last time we did a rep review in 2018, we did a discussion document, which we'd probably recommend that gets dusted off and reused for this coming round. With regard to the 2018 review, it did go off to the Local Government Commission. That was the last time it was done. There was one ward that was marginally outside the plus or minus 10% at 10.02%, but it went to the Commission largely because there were 2 appeals. And one of them was that community boards should be covering the whole district, and the name of one community board that was challenged. But in their determination, the Commission did say that the council in the next round, like now, should engage more actively on the place or role of community boards. So that's something that I think, because the Commission has indicated that in their last decision, that's something that we should be looking at, because if it does go to the Commission this time around, they'll be asking that question, well, did you take notice of what we indicated in our last review? So on to the process and timeframes there. There's an outline there of what we've indicated of the appropriate steps and timelines that we have to do things. There are legislative timeframes that we have to meet. So they're there as well. And we've just worked through that there should be some workshops just to debate and discuss the findings, for example, from the informal consultation. We will be developing some scenarios based probably on that feedback, and presenting to council through workshops various scenarios, so that council can land on one initial proposal. There can only be one that is then adopted as a formal initial proposal it's publicly notified, and then there's a period for the public to make submissions. Council will then hear those submissions and either choose to retain the initial proposal or change it following on from those submissions to make a final proposal. That then gets publicly notified again, and there's another period for the public to make objections or appeals on that. If there are no objections or appeals, then the matter becomes the basis of an election, and off we go into the elections in 2025. However, if there is just one objection or appeal, then the whole process goes off to the Commission. And they have until the 10th of April 2025 basically to make their determination. So that's really very quick skirmish through what is upcoming in 2024. And really it's just a matter of the council giving a steer, if you like, as to they're happy with some level of informal consultation, and they're happy with the outlined timetable.
Thank you for that, Dale. Questions for Dale before we go into general discussion? Councillor Barrett.
Through you, Your Worship. Dale, you mentioned a council can have a minimum of 5 and maximum of 29 councillors, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And does that apply to all councils, or is it based on the population?
No, it's in the legislation for all councils, except Auckland, that is taken out because they have their own separate legislation. But yes, 5 to 29, no one, that's the permitted allowance. No councils go anywhere near the high level, but it is permitted. And some councils are now sort of streamlining it downwards, saying fewer councils are better. But that's just some councils' view. So it's entirely a local decision, what best suits your community. What's the number of councillors that best suit your community?
So you have a formula here, and you have this process of plus or minus 10%.
Yeah.
So how did you, is that just the number of households, or the population divided by 14 gives you a figure, then you go plus or minus that? So
correct, yes. So that figure
doesn't mean it's right or wrong, it's just plus or minus.
Yeah, so we have to stick within that figure of 1214 to 1484. If we go outside those two figures, we're outside the plus or minus 10% and therefore into the local government commission territory. So we try to keep it within that. If we can't, for valid reasons, so we're splitting a community or adding two just quite different communities together, the legislation does permit that, but we have to have a reason for that.
So we don't have to fit the rule.
That's the rule which we should try to adhere to, but if we have good reason not to, that's fine.
Councillor Kennedy.
Through you, Chair. Dale, I know these are legal requirements, but the trouble that I have with it, we're governed by statistics that we know don't work. So is there anything being done about statistics and how we can better them?
The law,
Or we just keep going?
yeah, the law's the law, and we have to follow that. And the law, as it currently stands, says we must use the latest census or the latest population estimates. The latest census is not available for this exercise, so we've got to fall back on the 2023 estimates. The figures that have been provided are the figures under the current ward structure. So we can play around with that ward structure. We may go from 8 wards to 4 wards, for example, which may change the whole look of that table. So there's a lot of things that a lot of tools there that we can use next year to play around with that. But in answer to your question, these are the figures, unfortunately, that we must use.
Councillor Grant.
No, basically answered the question, but Dale, if the 2023 figures are out early next year, do you use them or do you still revert back to the 2018?
So we've been advised by the Local Government Commission that the 2023 census figures are out in May of next year, but to the detail that we need won't be available till the end of 2024, which is too late for this process. So the advice from the Local Government Commission is for a whole country, use the population estimates as of 2023. They are the figures.
Right, so, because I suspect the numbers for the, by taking a map out, the population is probably quite a bit higher, but so if you use the figures from 2018 and then change the ward boundaries, that is going to throw it all out.
Well, yes, we'll be using the population estimates as at 2023, which, yes, you're right, they are based on the 2018 census, and we know that things have changed in the last 5 years. But yes, we would still use those figures there as it estimates 2023, and then we must use those, and then we change around the boundaries if we wanted to, or amalgamate or split wards. That's in your call for next year, and we'll be presenting a number of scenarios by guidance given by elected members and any informal consultation that may give us some feedback.
Okay.
Dale, the Bruce Ward's right on the cusp of, and this isn't being smart, I don't agree with it, but they are on the cusp of 4 councillors. If you took the figure of dividing by 15 by dividing by 16, it would actually be less of a variation to take 4 councillors for the Bruce than to do what we've done here. We've got to consider every option. That is an option because it would pull the 10% plus or minus. I've gone, they only need another 124 people right now with 15 to get to the plus or minus 31 for each vote, for each councillor. But if we gave an additional councillor went out to 16, then it would all fall into line. I don't agree that we need any more of an unwieldy council, but that is an option, isn't it? And it's actually an option that fits the variance.
Absolutely, and you may go the other way. You may go down to 10 councillors and find that the same situation works.
Yeah.
So these are the types of detail we will do next year.
I was getting to that. So to fulfil your needs under the community boards today, you just want us to consider the positives and the negatives of the community board and give directive, or do we keep that to ourselves at the moment? You need it, right?
That's all next year stuff. All I'm saying, this is what we need to be thinking about, because next year we do have to address it.
Nice. And then the one thing, and isn't it just great that this is obviously the thoughts of a politician that's at the exit door, not the entry door. If we look at where the true aspiration of what we want as a councillor to reflect the broad spectrum of the communities that we serve, and we look at the moment, and as I said, on the centrefold for it as wealthy, white, European, male, us. If we were to ever seriously challenge and try and get to that breadth and hope, and I know that there's so many arguments for this, but to go 7 at large puts a totally different financial perspective on it and allows a young female, someone that's on a benefit, someone that's on a short wage, someone other than who sits around the table at the moment, to genuinely have a go at being a councillor and represent their people and their voice in this community. And I know there's reasons for, but in the 28 years I've been here, we've never seriously challenged ourselves to how do we get it that we bring everyone in to fairly represent the society that we cover. So I'll throw it out there. We need to consider going out as large. We are a district. We've evolved, I think, in the last decade, start thinking as a pack, thinking as a district. And actually, if all 7 councillors were from the West Otago ward, because that was where the best 7 were, I'm sweet with that. because you should be thinking just about the same as everyone else, but that was just my thoughts on it, Dale. We genuinely need to grab this one. It's one of the tasks we get to do every 5 years. Have some courage to think what the council is that you want to have represent the district that we love. Kenny, they got you going.
I'm just thinking that to me, that's why it's flawed, because it puts the scales heavily in one camp. And I mean, is that fair representation? That's the question, isn't it?
Well,
If you were at large, there could be 7 representatives from West Otago. What would you think about that, John? So yeah, you've got to put it on the scales and balance things.
John.
In the description of yourself, you wish you could go old.
Yeah.
But honestly, we've talked at times, and even this morning, we have discussions that pertain to one particular area. And I think it's fantastic. We have a councillor from that area that can speak with knowledge those whatever the issue is. I think the way we've got this, there's no, well, we're putting the cart forward also from this year. But unless there's a really firm reason to change, I think we represent each little pocket, each little corner of our district, of the wide district, well, by the way it's set up now.
We could go one from each ward and 4 at large or something.
Oh,
all I'm doing is just challenging that we've always gone that same way. And I know that we are dictated by the people that put their names forward at the election. But let's face it, we look around. Where's the females? Where's the young ones?
I'm here.
Yeah, there's 3. Terribly disproportionately male.
But we all went through an election this year.
Yeah, I know we did.
So the process is there.
I'd just like to at least us to have the courage to consider change.
Thank you, dear Mr. Mayor. At the last election, there was quite a lot of females actually stood, and many of them didn't get on. And also, just electing members at large doesn't necessarily mean you elect diversity.
No. Anyway,
Just challenging. And is our representative from Lawrence?
Sure, Picker.
Sure, Picker, that's right.
In case you've forgotten, your worship. In a roundabout way, like we've got the 2 community boards as well. So effectively, West Otago would have 8 governors, and in Lawrence we've got 7. So they're all duly elected members too. So there's good representation, which is done in the democratic process. So I'm saying if it's not broken, why fix it? The current government is struggling with that.
I look forward to the next election where my CEO just whispered to me that we were going to get things moving, and that was me that said that, of course. Yeah. Here we are moving at a fast rate.
happy to move both recommendations.
Thank you for that, Councillor Payne. Councillor Payne's moved both. Councillor Herbert seconded them. Do we need any further discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Kia ora, Ben and Dale, thank you for helping us there. We've got a bit of a conversation. That's as near as we've got in 28 years. That's quite good going, isn't it? Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mike's coming up for our next one, which is our place, Torrey Mouth.
Worship. Just a couple of things to highlight. Maybe is the in the report here is the population growth that you'll see there in the Farragut community over the last decade or so. Secondly, this consultation plan that you've got in front of you has been informed by really good preliminary engagement with community representatives. So and that's helped to identify some, I think some quite relevant topics for consultation, which are listed there. And I get a good feeling that we're going to have a robust and purpose community plan for Torrey Mouth. Looking forward to getting into it. But yeah.
Questions for Mike before we head into general discussion? We've been down this road before, we should know what we're doing. Okay, open for general discussion. I will say that The concern I have, and obviously highlighted by Milton, is that we went out to Milton with over 30 events. We canvassed exhaustively. We did the whole consultation process. We got to the end. We made our deliberations. And then months and months and months after it, we got dumped on by non-attendees that never turned up at any of those meetings. So I think you do a magnificent job, Mike and the team, of getting out the canvassing and the reach that we're getting in our consultation is far greater than it's ever been. And yet we still have this problem of it's almost like we're not engaging with the electronic or there's some group that we're not getting to in the newspaper or however we're doing it. Is the Tyree Mouth also, is there another way?
Oh, we try and get, through your worship, we try and get as creative as we can.
Yeah.
As we well know. But at the end of the day, you can't. People can't. I guess my other comment on that is in my other role, which is implementing some of the community projects. I would say that you're right. It's often a different bunch of people who are coming to me and wanting to do stuff than the people that you might have had discussions with. Which is interesting.
Hopefully, we did take that on the process.
But I think at its core, having those key projects listed, that's fine. That gives you the basis for going forward. That's what the community said is important.
And then just one of you'll remember a few months ago, maybe councillors, there was a couple came and saw us that had the coffee caravan at Tyree Mouth. And I thought maybe if we approach them and see whether, because they gather the locals in on it. Another way of doing it. That was the only thing that I thought could have been a difference. Again,
we did discuss that when we got together and saw how we would do this. And Tyree Mouth had 3 meetings before council had any involvement. So a lot of these things, as Mike said, has been already run past their the ratepayers there, and they did it over a period when there was a lot of the cribbies that don't normally live there staying there. So it's had a lot of input behind the scenes before it got to this stage. And yeah, we think it's really good and quite happy with it.
Councillor Grant.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, it's not the first rodeo, and I think it's worked in the past. I think it looks good. Regards to the people that come out afterwards, there's people that sit on their hands and don't do anything until something happens, and then think how that happened. Or you can't combat that. So I think we've done a good job. It'll work.
So you're happy to move?
Yeah.
Happy to second?
Yes.
And I said that was Graham Finch.
Both.
Any further discussion? Put to the vote, all those in favour?
Aye.
Those against, cheers for that, Mike.
Just make the point, Your Worship, that these have been amended in the past because that's what would happen. I remember Carker Point, for example, which was the Catlins. The Surf Lifesaving Club and the toilets weren't on the community plan, but came up later. And it's legitimate, like we have to have flexibility in where we're going, that if a community comes up and says, hey, here's a great vehicle, I've got another idea, that we actually, have an ability to deal with that. And we have. So the plans, you can amend plans, just in that side of it. So it can be a positive thing too. It doesn't have to be a negative.
But when we relitigate an issue and then you've got do you take the Facebook non-attendees or pay respect to those that did follow the due process? And I just think just as long as we consider Facebook, any of that, and I'm sure you have, but you're going nowhere because we're off to number 3. Reserve management plan feedback. Just so everyone knows, councillors, I'm going to take number 1 and then we'll go through the bullet points A to H individually so that we'll do it quickly, though, I'm sure.
Thanks, Your Worship. Happy to take this one as read. Also, well, first, see the recommendations of Mr. Government.
Right. Thoughts, team? Councillor Herman.
Oh, thanks, Mike, and I'll probably have to move a whole lot, but we have some, Your Worship. Look, I really appreciate Mike, the fact that in some instances where we thought we were gonna get a submission received, we didn't. But we're sort of happy to take some of that consultation through the outplace and use that, so I think that's a great idea. And there's sort of two processes going on at the moment separately with the right of way with the health trust, but the two can't help but be linked because, but my question is, and it comes up later on, if a right of way gets granted, we wouldn't need to go through the process of revoking the reserve status on the land. If everyone got what they wanted out of the right of way, then that reserve status could be left on that land.
Like he said, it's correct, yeah, there are, but like he's, when you wish up the, that company.
Yeah, so I guess, suppose, I'm sitting here thinking, I had a really good talk the other day about, like, the right of way gives the golf club, because the reserve status is probably there, it gives them access over it. The right of way gives the golf club access over it. Everyone seems to win by the shortest possible method, if you like, and cheapest possible method, I would hope.
I guess that's right, if that's where that lands, everyone's happy with that, then this much smaller process around the reserve application could be possibly, yeah, laid to rest.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Councillor Norwell.
Thanks. I sort of was looking at that same point as Councillor Herbert has just raised in that one there. And my thought was, and I asked the question when the submitters were here the other day, as to whether it should actually become, if they would be happy if it became actual road reserve. They didn't seem to be quite so keen on that idea. But if we were to revoke the reserve status, but if we keep the reserve status, we don't have to sell the land. That would be a saving, presumably, to the West Otago Health Limited start. So I think we would want to expect a reasonable commercial return for the sale of the land, and the public would have the right to expect that too, the public at large. So I was wondering, perhaps the wording of F that clarify that council will consider revoking the reserve status of part of this reserve to allow for formalised access West Otago Health. But
Slowly.
Sorry, I'll just mention, rather than actually moving that now, just mentioning that rather than opening that up for discussion.
Well, I'm, as always, taking John's guidance, so I'm happy that. But I thought we were going to be picking away quite a few of them, but I'm happy to take the one recommendation from my lot now, if the general consensus is, because I thought we were going to get swamped with questions. It's pretty obvious we're not. But if we're going to do that, then
can I just add? Sorry, I should have said, and that doesn't actually tie in this, as far as I can see, that amendment or that wording. It's not an amendment, but that wording doesn't actually tie in what we do specifically with the land either when it comes to the next agenda item regarding that. That it's sold, made road reserve, kept as just public reserve.
Your Worship, can I just make the point that revocation is a separate process? The wording, the recommendation talks about consider, and we all know that you may not end up going down the pathway of revocation. So it doesn't automatically say it'll be revoked. It just makes provision to be revoked. So that's the whole story about a reserve management plan. It's about the use to which land could be put. It's not tying us in. And if the subsequent deals are done and everybody's happy, council could choose not to go any further. But it doesn't change what's actually in the reserve management plan. You see what I mean? It's not forcing council to do anything. So I'll just make a point about that.
what's your thoughts on that, Councillor Wheeler?
Yes,
Changing.
the wording just has to be changed then, perhaps that clarify that council will just allow, make provision to formalise access for West Otago Health Limited and the Tapinui Golf Club. This may include revocation of the reserve status.
Getting general mumblings from the side.
Yeah, no, I'm just, it's still not a.
Through the worship, that it might be clarified, like, so the RMP as it stands, the draft. Clarifies that there is that, that is amended, you as an access way, so that's what's part of the plan, I guess it's provided for as currently in the legislation. What's recommended as a change here is based on the submissions and the verbal hearing that we had. Reflects what those parties were asking for. And as Steve says, it doesn't say we will do anything, it simply provides us that option if and when we want to do it.
I just want to check, you're suggesting, Mike, that you don't need a separate amendment or addition to talk about access because the reservation plan already provides that.
So that just we perhaps need to consider item 7 as well.
Item
Yeah,
7.
regarding the West Otago Health Trust right. As to how that. So they're asking for the right way.
What I'm going to do to push things forward, I'm going to go with whatever recommendation someone puts their hands up and says a recommendation. We'll get a vote on it, work out where we go. And remembering, John, I'm willing to take the whole lot.
I'm going to, just going back to if again, now council always claiming, as long as we are ensuring through that recommendation that the golf course will have access over that land, which if it was a potential sale, to which they got trust. If that's not.
Well, if you look on page 22, the recommendation there, right, section 5.14, and then the RMP state that council will consider revoking reserve status and subdivision, and if approved, council will then subsequently consider with appropriate protection to ensure its continued use.
Happy to move, your worship.
Right, we're going to move it.
Sorry.
The original, yeah, the original whole was
Yeah.
seconded by councillor Graham. Any further discussion? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? The chair went. Against, no. Land Transport Program update. Who are we going to? We're going to Chris. Sorted.
Thank you, worship. I will take the report as read, and the only matter I wish to add is that I could tell you that the 8th of November approved application.
Councillors, discussion. We do in this inflationary environment, knowing what we're looking at, this is additional above and beyond what we're doing, and adds an additional 2% in rates.
No, you wish.
No, yes it does.
Subsidies.
Funded from.
Well,
reserves.
Yep, it's using up the equivalent of 2%. Because I'm quite sure this year we will find somewhere something to do with reserves 10 times over.
How many instructions, please? Then we just need to, I'm pretty sure this was a canvas, and we didn't apply to Whakakotahi without general agreement with the council to do so. Because there was a deadline that we had to make, and I do recall that there was that debate and discussion.
But I hark back again today that in recent weeks it was coming more and more apparent that our rate rise is going to be ungodly. And now we're in a different environment. We have to consider it with respect. I'm quite happy if you vote, as long as you consider the environment and don't come back in March and go, yeah, that was going to happen. Councillor Bolwell.
Yeah. This is actually for maintenance work, so whatever, if we defer it, we decide not to do this, work it's going to come back and bite us at some stage in the
Mm.
future anyway, and will probably be more costly to rectify if we delay it. The damage or whatever will be worse, that we're more required to fix things. So the fact we're have approval from Whakatahi to improve their share of the funding, we just can't afford to turn it down. We're going to have to, it's something work that's going to have to be done anyway. It's not just a nice to have now or in the future.
Are you moving that?
Yes, I'm prepared to move that we receive a report, note that the application was made, and that confirm share of the $700,000. Reserves.
1, 2 and 3 has been moved, seconded by Councillor Catherwood. Any further discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against?
If you wish.
Thank you, Chris. Lily. Lily. Welcome, well. The old deficit in the back pocket trick, eh, Lil?
Hello, so through you, Worship, I'll just take the report as read and be available to ask some questions.
Right, okay, questions for Lily before Councillor Lily.
Okay, question number 1, and I realise that you've just taken over this, so this is no. I'd like to know how come there's a balance of 11.3 that we knew nothing about. That's my first question, and it's nothing at you. I can remember when TDCF used to fund this and there were other funders. I'm surprised that it's got to this, so I'm concerned about that. And then I actually have concern also about funding the parade going forward. And it's not that I don't approve it, I do. I like it. But actually, we've got West Otago and we've got all the other areas in the district. And it's something that I think we actually need to think about, because we may need to have a policy on what we're going to do to be fair across the district. West Otago always have their Christmas Eve parade. And look, it's not that I don't support this, because I do, but I just think it's something that actually needs a little bit of discussion, or that's my comment.
Councillor Payne.
Yes, that was really close to what I was going to bring up, and it isn't because of you, because you've just started, so that's completely away from you. But to have that much of deficit is a bit of a shocker in the whole big scheme of things in council's budget. It's not a major figure, but that it's been ongoing for so long is a huge thing. It is really good. There every year, and was really great. This year there was a lot of people coming and going. It brings people into Balclutha itself, but we need to look at making it that it does fund itself somehow, if we can possibly do that, so that possibly people are sponsoring more of it or something like that. Because as Councillor Ludeman points out, next minute there'll be hands up everywhere to fund for other communities as well. So yes, it's a really positive thing. Happy all kids and adults really enjoy it, but it's a concern that we never had a clue that there was that much over budget.
Councillor Brown.
Through you, Lily, well done. Pulling back $1,828.07. Did a good job, and I'm fully supportive of keeping it going. I never realised there's Grinches on accounts.
Can I say we're faced with a retrospective issue that we've got to sort out, and taking it for a decision on the long-term plan is really, I'm not pulling tooth for no reason. We're going to issue, what is it, $11,300. I think we can clear it up now, because we're either going to clear it up now or we're going to clear it up after we go through the absolute waste time of the submission process by taking data reserves. There, so we're not going to welsh it. So Councillor Barron, followed by Fudge.
Question for Lily, is the $3,000 of this year included in the 11,300, or is it 14,300 you require?
Yes.
Councillor Fudge.
That was fine.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well done, Lily. Not very nice inheriting someone else's woes, though, is it? It's not a very good feeling, but things to deal with. But my question is, so we're saying that the rest of the Clutha district subsidises this parade in Balclutha. So we're going to wipe, like you say, your worship, 11K, just like that. What do West Otago and Bruce Wards and Catlins and Clinton get out of it?
No, that's a fair point. The only thing I'm saying is that it's a bill. Where are we going to tidy it up from? We can go to submissions, and the two options are we pay it or we don't pay it.
So who is this committee that organises this parade? Like, are they proactive? Do they take ownership of what goes on in the community here? Right. So, you know, like where's their sense of ownership? Or are they going to keep coming to council every year and expect all the other communities in the district to subsidise their parade? It's the question I've got. And please don't take it the wrong way, but when we go back to talk to our constituents, these are the questions that they ask us.
So just some context for your worship. It's been building up over 6 years. So it's not, you know, you divide 11,000 by 6 and it's not 11,000 per year where the fatal flaws have occurred. It's always been dependent upon grant funding for it. If you're trying, those that know how grants work, you know, in the business, you've got a budget which you have to start setting up a long time ahead for your activity, and you don't get to know what you're going to get until just about the day before. And actually, Lily's just found that, you know, the budget for it was for a certain amount, and she only received not anywhere near what was being asked for, and that's why there's a $3,000 deficit this time. And that's the nature of that, because we don't budget and say, here you are, here's an event. Balclutha ratepayers can fork out X amount of dollars that's budgeted. That's not how that system worked. And it also wasn't probably why it was brought to councillors in the past, because it was done within that system. And all I asked Lily to do was, when she came and saw me and says, hey, I've got a problem, I've got this parade, we've only received this amount of money, it's happening, and we don't have enough, what do I do? I said, well, this is what we do. It's got to proceed because it's already happening. She's looked to make some savings, which she's done, and you congratulated her for that. We make it transparent and bring it to you so you're aware of it. We also, she found out that, you know, there is a deficit that's been building up. We'll better deal with it. So now that we're aware of a deficit, let's just make that available, tell you what it is. And then look, as you said, there's the LTP. And I'm not talking about getting submissions on it. I'm just saying that, you know, there's only 28,000 left in the general reserve. There's going to be other requests for that. I know that there's a potential request for things from others for it. All we really needed was you to know that the parade has happened and there's a liability that's been accumulated, and we should just address that through the budget process that we're going to be going through in some fashion. We don't know, Your Worship, for example, whether we're going to get investment returns or things like that. You know, so that's how this has transpired, and I think there we go, part of transparency. You know, as you said, you've been very gentle with Lily, as we should do, but it's nothing to do with you. But also this year was an example. So moving forward, you might want to actually think, is Balclutha going to fund this? Should we put some money aside for it so we don't have this situation and have these issues, or whatever? But that's for another time.
I'm still tempted to give Lily a hand. Okay, team. So for transparency's sake, there it is. Well, and you're going to move something now? Oh, well done.
No, just I'm going to ask one question first. Quite happy for it to go through to the submission for the long-term plan, but there used to be an events fund. Is that still around? And if the events fund was still around, would that come out of that?
I don't think you've got an events fund. I do know that there was a decision made by council not to put money aside for events, but to fund events on a one-off or case-by-case
There
basis.
definitely used to be an events fund, and so when we're talking about where the money perhaps should come from, I raised the question of that events fund, but if, I mean, someone can look into that. If there's not there, I guess it can come as I'm quite happy to move it as a submission.
So you're moving all three and the two that are agreed with?
I am definitely 1 and 2, get rid of the deficit. Oh, and is there a deficit? Oh, okay. Yeah, so we've got no choice.
Correct.
But I still would ask, there used to be an events fund, so where did that money go? And we always get told that those funds never run away, so that might be there somewhere.
Just before we move on, I've got two here, questions. Did you move all three? Because I'll take a second.
Yeah, I have
before we
to, no, I
move.
have to move it.
So-
I agree to, because you can't, what are we gonna do with the deficit? It has to be watched and sorted, and moving forward, that's a different discussion, but I don't think we've got any choice but fund the deficit through the long term.
So I've got a mover, I need a seconder, and then we can move on, please. Second, councillor McAtammany. Further discussion from councillor Catherwood, then Lowell.
Through you, your worship. So Alison's bringing up that event. So I remember rightly that we used money that was aside from special events, and it got used with the Rivieras.
No, it was an opportunities fund.
It was an opportunities fund. Oh, well, I don't agree. The deficit in the balance. Great benefit to Perth District. Lily, June, good on you for identifying. That's I mean, I live in a small community. We've got many people that get out there and put events together. A big fireworks event that entertains thousands of people. In Catlins Wood, at Neves, and if they have a deficit, we deal with it as a committee within ourselves, and we strive to make it up the next year and get ourselves back to zero. And that's what these community events are about. Sorry, I have to leave it, and hopefully there might be some investment service, something that's taken. Is that where we're intending to take this money?
It's just deferring the matter for later decision to the LTP.
Councillor Wheeler.
Let's just go and suggest that there is the opportunities fund. Whether it funded from that 79,000 at the moment, but that seems an opportunity. We have funded other events from that in the past. That
What do we fund it from that? Is that the Lawrence 150th? So it's sort of
We're just not suggesting you find a way of needing to fund it at this point.
We
We don't
don't.
need to. We can do that later when we've done some time.
Councillor Payne.
Thank you, your worship. I'm sitting here thinking, well, like, Steve, you must be in a terrible position because as a good employer, you want to start your employees on a nice level playing field. This is terrible, giving this person a position with baggage. And that's just not fair on them. And I have to say that I'm 100% behind getting rid of this debt. What we do going forward is something totally different. It's a different discussion.
All right, are we ready to go for a vote? We'll have a show of hands, I suppose. So we know what we're doing. All those in favour, please raise your hands and say aye. All those against, please raise your hand and say no.
No.
Votes recorded anyway. We do know now that no matter what you do, your votes are all taken in one. So that's you sorted out for Christmas, Lil.
don't sweat it, Lily.
No
Don't sweat it, Lily.
Jerry's not here. Who's taking Jerry? Joel?
We take with honour and stuff, but your worship, but yes, absolutely. The estimate for this was nearly 4 years old. We have also included an overflow tank in this design with the recent expectations and discussions with the regional council about
our sewerage pump stations work. So it does provide us a bit of a small period of contingency. If there's a power outage or something like that. But yeah, obviously it'll go out to tender and we'll get the tender prices back in. But at this stage, the approved budget was much less than was available. It definitely had to come back to council for consideration. The Ōaka pump station is in very poor condition and is pretty much hanging in there. So we definitely need to get on and replace this pump station. It is the main pump station right at the bottom of the Ōaka wastewater system that takes all of the wastewater from Ōaka and pumps it out to the treatment plant. So you're happy to take any questions between Donna and myself through you, Richard.
Councillor Finch.
Okay, because the original estimate was 4 years old, why wasn't it looked at then, most recently, because in these times we know how everything's really skyrocketed, so why didn't we get another estimate so that we knew it would be in a bit better ballpark figures? So my question.
I would say through you, Bishop, not all of it's the change in estimated cost. There's, I think from memory, was it over 300,000 was the additional tank storage time? Was it more than that?
Yeah.
Once there is maybe not.
Thank you.
Councillor
Through you, Chair. Jules, good to see that it's going to be shifted and not left down on where it was sitting. Have we got other pump stations that are sitting in the wrong place?
This pump station, through you, Bishop, this pump station could be reconstructed close to where it is, but since we're having to build a new one, it makes sense to relocate it. But yeah, there's always improvements that we would look to make when we're doing upgrades, but some of our townships don't have any pump stations at all, but like Tapanui, some others have a number of pump stations, which when we renew them, we look at what actually is appropriate for the current state of the environment.
Councillor Bowen.
Just a question through your work. Just how much emergency storage capacity does this scheme, will this provide? Units, is it in terms of time, is it?
So through you, your worship, we sort of aim for 4 hours. Getting much more than that actually becomes quite very, very costly. And usually with the alarms and bits and pieces, we can get people out to hopefully either put something in place or get a generator or whatever within that time frame.
Councillor Finch.
We don't have an option, so I think we just need to go ahead and get it done. So I'm willing to move recommendation 1 and 2 that we do agree to.
Got a mover, need a second. Councillor Phelps. Further discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Westhaga Health Trust, right away. We've already discussed this, but we should be able to just vote on it.
I'll take this ready, your worship.
Everyone's thoughts?
I'm happy to, if no one else wants to speak to the worship, I'm more than happy to move that we do approve the rest of the right of way. We all know the importance of Westhaga Health Trust and the work they do. One of the most important buildings in our district, and they're a large employer, and it's the next step in their growth of their business. So and by agreeing with this right of way, as we just heard it, they save us the anguish of going through a revoke of the reserve status. It would mean everyone gets what they want. So I'm more than happy to move, we do approve.
Seconded. Councillor Kennedy, further discussion? Councillor Volwheeler.
I guess just the question is, obviously it's wanted for vehicular access, just whose responsibility will maintenance of that access way be? So allowing, maintaining ability for vehicles to access it.
Oh, sorry. I was looking, hang on, sorry, could you repeat that if that's a question?
I guess whose responsibility would the actual maintenance of the accessway be?
Good question.
To allow vehicles over it.
Well, you know, my understanding where you have rights of way, that they're usually maintenance responsibilities attached to them. So if you add, there's more than one party to a right of way, they will have maintenance responsibilities. It will depend on the number of parties, but that's what they're attached to.
We should take a help building it, mate.
That's the first of the questions, so I've got moving a second, put to the vote, all those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Look at that for timing, Sharon. Welcome. So we're under number 8, reserve transfers. Oh, yours.
Worship. And so this report brings to you the outcome of it in the report and expenditures last year and where all those costs fell into the report. So in addition to the information I've written here, we've done a bit more research with the IT department to quantify some more Three Waters costs. So in addition to the Three Waters deficit, water operations deficit of 1.15 million, there's also an additional $234,000 worth of overhead costs that relate to water. Other than that, I'll take the report as read and answer any questions you may have.
Questions, councillors?
Sorry, how much additional was the police?
234,000 of the 287 relates to water IT costs.
Thank you.
Sharon, can I get it right in my head? Other than the 19,000, that's different. So you could say that it's day-to-day ongoing costs, and yet now by default we can fund that through debt. If we're going to take a loan fund it, then what we've actually done is that portion's now been funded with debt funded. So no, don't debt funded. That's what's happening.
Oh, well, sorry.
Your worship, you can debt fund operational costs and it's in our policy in exceptional circumstances. And in this case, it was bringing a lot of things back in house costs, got a lot more, and we would have in the past funded it from the general reserves.
So I've requested a few times before, but are we able to please get that breakdown of the 74 or 77 million or wherever we are? Because I know that it's just over half Three Waters. It's the other half it will have been made up primarily of a hub and buzz. But are we able to get that? That's really starting to be a critical figure to know where we go.
Yeah.
It's lovely there. Is it hard? Yeah.
We'll kind of going back quite a few years, just right from the very beginning of the borrowing and looking at a capital program. It won't just be the hub and water.
Yeah, well, there has to be. There has to be
so
25, 30 odd million. If we could get it there, because it's starting to get really critical. Further questions, team, or does someone got an epiphany moment?
Or just for clarification, Your Worship, council will remember that I had mentioned that one of the things we're going to deal with in the LTP is the deficit that we've accumulating over the last couple of years as a consequence of the Three Waters related side of things in that transition. And so whilst we're going to be using a lot of Three Waters reserves, obviously they impact on the LTP because they're not available for the reserves. And also whilst we're saying that there's still a remaining deficit, we think that should be it'll be a much smaller deficit because of the deficit remaining that's non-Three Waters becomes quite marginal, very small now. So we are really talking about Three Waters related deficit appearing. And so using all of the reserves, which is what we're going to be needing to do, or generally all of them. The rest of it will get attached to debt funding. And that gets resolved through the long-term plan and adds to that. We always knew we were carrying that forward, that there was going to be debt needing to be carried forward as a consequence of transition. And I'm just letting you know that we're already building into the LTP. The figures you see on Thursday will be these figures, which we're having to address as a result.
This will be an ongoing regular that I want though, is the fact that always in my head, always working in figures, most of it's Three Waters. That isn't the case anymore. So consequently, I can't in a nutshell say what it is. It's starting to get too detailed and you get that in your head, and then when we move forward, we know exactly where the twos and throws are. I just really appreciate if the figure could come forward. Councillor, you got a name? Ebony.
Yeah, through the chair. Steve, so sharing this, no actual general reserve account. It's only purely a book entry.
Yeah, well, you can.
It's not a bank
So there's no. So what about what is the council holding any cash reserves at the moment? General reserve never comes out of it.
We don't have a cash reserve as such. It goes in and out of a bank account, like just a normal bank account, but we put it over there and say, right, this is the general reserve. It's come from these activities, so that you guys, when we build some up again, can use that to spend on community projects that you've done in the past.
Just we debt funding.
There's no one.
Oh, well, I mean, you could use investment equity. Instead, you could always use investment equity for bits and pieces.
The council once upon a time, the general reserve would have been cash.
The general reserve has always been a book entry reserve. The difference has been in previous years, we had excess cash, which would build up in fixed term deposits and things like that, in addition to the investment. But the situation we've been in, which we explained, was where you are not receiving the revenue that you need, you don't have the cash build up. You're actually having to draw cash from loans. So we don't have cash bearing accounts sitting there anymore.
But once upon a time, say 10 years ago, in the council euro debt, would have been a cash reserve, and the general reserve would have been extra cash in hand.
Known as the black hole.
No. But the answer is yes. I mean, don't forget, if we could always cash up aspects of the investment. That is cash, in that sense. And what we were saying before is, with this LTP, we need to shift to balancing the books so that we're generating as much revenue as we're spending. We won't need to be drawing loans for that side of things anymore.
Yeah, I'd struggle with the concept that a reserve is actually debt, not anyway. That's
Councillor Mark.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Sharon. Love the way the report starts off. We've got a surplus, then it loses its shine under the overhead deficit. Not so glowing. So there's possibly more a question for Steve. So the deficit for the service delivery, it wouldn't have been something we would have carried forward. It was actually on the day stuff that was happening, and it was due to the use of consultants to deliver the work program and the water operations. So is there any way we can elaborate a bit more on these consultants? Like, what are they providing? Like, what are they consultants? What do they do?
No, it's not quite true to say, this has only been built up this year. We have said before that we have a $4 million contract, and before we made the decision to change contractors, we were spending $6 million a year, right? So that doesn't come out of the blue. That's what was costing us, but our budget was only $4 million. So we were building up deficit associated with that activity at that time as we're getting close to the transition. Then we made a decision that it was better for everybody in the district and ourselves to end that contract and bring it in-house. So then there was the transition cost associated with that, and then the increased operating costs, all on a budget that hasn't changed, other than perhaps inflation, that hasn't changed. And that's why I said to you, you know, you're talking not just 1 year, but building up over a couple of years for that. So just want to deal with that part first. And then when we're talking, let's say consultants. So, you know, when we had to bring in, we'd use consultants, we used 2 consultants. One was to plan the transition and manage the planning of the transition. One was to assist us write up and deal with the reticulation contract. So the contract side of things was another part of what we needed to do. We've had to have consultants in to replace staff where we haven't had technical leadership. We've had a consultant that's been doing a really good job, but at consultant rates, because that consultant's one of the essential team to try and help us with our compliance related issues and that. But in addition, for quite a period of time over the previous 12 months, was filling in actually for a position that we couldn't recruit for at a management level. So that's, you know, that is where you're talking consultants for it. In addition to, I mean, consultants for projects should be funded by the projects. So this is really truly operational related consultancy. But that's the explanation of why those things were so expensive.
Right. I know it gives us a really good, clear understanding of about the deficit. Like just when you read it here, it says consultants, but your explanation is actually quite good. Thank you.
Councillor Catherwood.
Yeah, probably this is directed at Jules, but a total income that we take in from Three Waters ratepayer wasn't that figure about 7 million? Really? And we had a contract at 4 million and an operational cost we identified at 6 million. So when I do those figures, I thought we still had that buffer there.
Through your worship,
Yeah.
there's no capital in there. That's only operational
Yeah.
cost. So you've still got to fund out of your 7 million, you've got
Yeah.
to fund your loan or your capital program and all the delivery of that as well. The 4 million odd was an operational cost, an operational contract.
Yeah.
So there's a big chunk of capital delivery in there as well. That's with the compliance work we've got coming up, that's not getting any smaller.
So then realistically going forward, you could expect that any major improvements, the same service, a doubling on Three Waters.
You would need to wait till next week, and we're not
That's
hesitant
pretty
what
good.
that's going to be.
Pretty easy figure to work out.
Yeah, you're thinking, no?
Well, that's it, isn't it? Numbers are numbers.
Yeah, that's okay, Ted. We've got something, we have moved them. Haven't moved it. No, we haven't got a motion. Someone bold enough to do that. Will be all for. Councillor Loonman, seconded by Councillor Volwell, you happy with that?
Sorry, no, was it just?
Ali's moved, but if you second it.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
There's dollar amounts there that have to be put in. Can I approve? To approve that there's dollar amounts there.
What's the dollar amount going to be? Sharon, do you know what dollar amount is going into number 3?
You wish that the amount currently in that reserve is sitting at 5,044,000 and if you. The X's were there just if you wanted to not use all the reserve, you wanted to pick a number between 0 and 1 million.
Were there zero?
Right, I'm going to move, and you're happy with that figure, Ali? And I'm not sure where you were, Bruce. Are you happy to second or?
No, I'm not.
Okay, then I'm looking for a second.
That's the.
Sorry, we just want to clarify one thing, Your Worship, is whilst the majority of the reserve balance sits in urban Three Waters, because there aren't many reserves sitting in rural, and that's fine because it's still using the reserve. We just want to make it clear that the deficit is generated across urban and rural. And it wouldn't be correct to say it's just urban waters loan funding. It needs to be Three Waters loan funding. So we just want to make that change. It's Three Waters loan funding, whatever the difference. Use urban Three Waters reserves, sure. Urban Three Waters, sorry. Loan funding. So we just make that, make that one clarification change.
Yeah.
So now that the mover's there, I'm sure a seconder will come flying at me.
How much?
Well, we're talking about the deficit, the deficit, sorry,
What is
sorry, just hang on a second, can we?
Hold on, Tate.
Sharon identified a change, and the change was the deficit of 287 was amended because there were more Three Waters costs associated with it, like Sharon. And yet the urban Three Waters reserve total is not sufficient to cover the increased deficit now that's attributed to Three Waters. That would be correct. At the moment, we've got figures in there that actually had to be amended, which aren't in the recommendation, right? So recommendation 3 really has to be 892,515 plus, what was the IT figure?
234,400.
So that's resolution 3 in total. And funded from transfer from urban Three Waters, you can leave that without any figures. And Three Waters loan funding without any figures.
You realise what's happening, team? I'm happy to second it, just because I see no other option.
I don't think that's why I moved it. I don't see we've got another option. So, okay, so that's 3. Was it 4?
4 gets reduced.
How much is that?
334.
Yeah, I'm thinking that. So it's deficit of 50,000 and that would be funded from rates by way of a loan. Is that
That's
what's
correct.
proposed? I don't think there's any other choice.
Bruce, some of the centre parade.
I just have a question as to how much is of this deficit relates to urban Three Waters and how much to rural Three Waters, because we should be paid proportionately according to rather than perhaps stripping the entire urban reserves, Three Water reserves. The rural Three Water.
And the demarcation between urban and rural, if they don't want any subsidising as such.
Consultancy work, a lot of it is to do with the rural business. Good portion of it is.
Is what's going to be paid.
For you, Worship, I wouldn't be able to say it myself. We just have the consultant costs come in and then they go out by RAB and Reedy. So that would be, would you be able to?
It would be, I mean, without doing a whole lot of detail, it'll be however we allocate, it'll be relatively representative in terms of how we allocate our overhead. So if we do it, fund it via a loan, it goes out via our overhead allocation. There's a proportion to stormwater, there's a wastewater, there's a proportion to urban water, and then there's another proportion for rural. So and there's been a big focus on rural treatment upgrades as well as wastewater. So I would have thought that would have been reasonably reflective of where the effort's gone in.
But does that then reflected in what we're and how we're allocating?
If you loan fund the whole lot, then that would then be allocated by our overhead allocation going forward. And as sorry to you, Worship, I was just pointing out to Steve that your decision about the Waka wastewater change of budget's pretty much taken up in your reserves you would have had in wastewater anyway. So if you loan fund it, it'll go out via that overhead allocation.
So I think it makes it simpler, Your Worship, that resolution 3 just has the revised figure, and it'll be Three Waters loan fund.
Yeah, I would agree with that after that discussion. Yes.
That's what you're moving?
Yeah, yeah.
Need a second? Oh, I said I'll second it. I still will second it. There's two things along. Yeah, see what we're doing. So is everyone, oh, hold on, further
Read it.
discussion?
Read it out how it's gonna read. Yeah.
So number
What we're
three,
actually voting on?
number three, the council approves the funding of the deficit generated from water operations of, whatever that figure is.
No, it was-
No.
1.1 million.
yeah.
Be funded by Urban Three was reserved. and-
just be funded from Three Waters loan funding.
And that council approves the remaining overhead deficit of 50,000? 30,000. Yeah. Be funded from rates following the one.
Is there anywhere in there that when the reserves build back up, that the imbalance between urban and rural is weighted back out? Asian, and was disproportionately going out in the urban. In fairness, they should be topped back up.
It's the way we're just doing it now, you wish is fair. So it is distributed across the accounts, but we're not getting it through.
So, everyone understand what we're voting on? But lovely, that's right.
And the bill.
Yeah, we're paying. So, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Right, it's gonna be a close one. We've now got a citizenship ceremony. There's a change, but obviously turned up.